Yes, Professor, please, can I ask you something about the Pakistan's position at the moment here, because the Pakistan government has changed. Before it was Imran Khan's government in Pakistan, but after the vote of no confidence in the opposition, they are in power in Pakistan, and Pakistan is also facing, because Imran Khan he's blaming the present government that it is all conspiracy, for American conspiracy, and because I visited Russia, and Russia was ready to give Pakistan on very cheap price oil and food and many things. So that's why. But America was not happy because of Imran Khan's visit in Russia. So what do you think that is this policy in this thing is affecting Pakistan? Is it real, and is correct that Pakistan is also the part of any conspiracy?
Yeah. Okay. So Pakistan is in a very difficult position in this situation, really. As we discussed earlier with India, India's big enough and significant enough politically and economically that it can exert influence on the world stage, and it can exert influence with the biggest powers, with the US and the West, and can project its aspirations more robustly. Pakistan is a smaller country economically and politically. It doesn't have just by sheer scale, it doesn't have the diplomatic power on the world stage that a country like India has. So it can't play those cards so effectively. So what it has to do, and I absolutely sympathise with a country like Pakistan that doesn't and shouldn't become a vassal of the West or the East. It should be able to forge its own independent path and be true to its ideals. But the practical reality, sadly, is that all countries have to think about who their friends are, who their enemies are, which side they're on sometimes. Pakistan has, militarily and economically tried to sometimes shift between alliance with the West and with China. We know that Pakistan has bought military equipment from China sometimes, and other times it's bought US fighter jets and so on. Geographically, the West would like it to be a partner of the West primarily because of where it is on the map and the defensive and intelligence alignments that we have. I think the immediate concerns for Pakistan are obviously very pressing, and they're to do with stabilising the economy and stabilising the food situation. I think Pakistan is facing a very grave economic crisis at the moment, and the implications of that are pretty horrendous to contemplate, really. We're seeing in parts of the country severe food shortages. The immediate concern of any government in Pakistan has to be to try and make the best decisions to stabilise the situation economically, to stabilise the food supply situation, which might include making appeals for aid, for food aid to various countries. Of course, speaking as a Westerner, I think I can understand why Pakistan might turn to Russia. As with many other countries around the world, they didn't necessarily want to follow the Western pressure and condemn Russia immediately. They wanted to think about their own practical interests. At the end of the day, if you can buy oil and gas and other things cheaply, then it's in your interest to do so. So I do actually absolutely understand the tactical considerations of not necessarily pushing Russia away in these situations. However, I think, as we discussed earlier, the longer term view here is that Russia is not going to be a good ally to partner with effectively, because I strongly suspect the Russian economy will collapse at some stage in the next couple of years because of the pressures of the conflict and the pressures of Western sanctions. So short-term benefits of trading with Russia or allying politically with Russia could quickly turn to longer-term problems and isolation for Pakistan. So I think you need a pragmatic government in Pakistan that's going to focus on the interests of the people. It's going to focus on economic stability, on food supply issues. If that means leaning more towards the West and to the United States, then I don't think Pakistan has much choice at the moment. It has to stabilise the situation. It has to feed its people, you know, and in my view, the best way of it being able to do that in the immediate term is to ally itself more with the West than with Russia. But you know, I say that as unbiased, perhaps, because I think that's the best way to go.
Indeed, it's a very, very interesting discussion, and some other time I'll request you a series of interviews about Pakistan and this region, especially India, Pakistan and Afghanistan, and some on political issues and democratic issues in the region, and secondly the terrorism in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And so this because your expertise and on terrorism as well as very much. So some other time I'll just request you for a series of interviews, 2, 3, 4, and we will discuss comprehensively about India and Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yeah. So far, thank you very much for your time. It's a very, very interesting discussion. So I'm thank you very much for your time. And
thank you,
Professor.
Thank you.
And goodbye, viewers.